Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the First Unitarian Society of Milwaukee's online worship service. I'm Reverend Dina McFeeters, and I'm honored to serve as Associate Minister at First Unitarian Society of Milwaukee. We welcome people of all genders, sexualities, ages, races, ethnicities, histories, and bodies. We welcome your mind, your heart, and your spirit. We welcome all that you're bringing with you and all that your heart longs to set down. I welcome you to our worship service by inviting you to repeat our mission after me. We gather to nurture the spirit, engage the mind, and inspire action. These opening words are called "It Begins Now in the Imagination" by Gretchen Haley. It starts here, in this moment, in this breath you feel rising in your chest, this beat building between us, the healing, the hunger, the hope, the courage, the calling, the commitment, the drawing out of a new day. It begins now in the imagination, in this story we weave together, this song we sing, this prayer we bring into being, from our hearts to our lips, from our hands to our life. Let's return to our beloved sanctuary to light our flaming chalice, symbol of Unitarian Universalism.
My name is Reverend Kimberly Tomchek Carlson, and it is my honor to serve as the Minister of Religious Education at the First Unitarian Society of Milwaukee. The story I have for you today is called Anything is Possible. This is a story of a sheep who, from the top of the hill, loved to watch the birds fly and thought to herself, "Oh, how lucky they are. They can choose how they look at things, from far away, from up close, or from somewhere in between." One day, the sheep had an idea and ran to see the wolf. "I have to talk to you," she shouted. He stopped what he was doing and listened. "Let's build a flying machine." "Do you think it's that simple? You've spent too much time watching the birds in the sky," said the wolf, shaking his head at her. But eventually, the sheep's dream got the better of Wolf, and they started working on the machine together. They gathered fabric and tools and followed the plans they had designed. When they were ready, they started the machine and took off into the sky. But the fabric wasn't strong enough. It soon ripped and they tumbled to the ground. "Let's try again," said the sheep, and she blew up some balloons. "Hold tight," she shouted. This time, as soon as they got the machine off the ground, birds popped the balloons. "Oh dear," shouted the wolf, "this is never going to work." But they decided to try one more time. The sheep had a new idea. She got the wolf to cut out a dragon's tail while she cut out the head. This time, it worked. They were flying. And steadily and surely, they continued to fly. Someone once wrote that only those who dream learn how to fly. "See," said the sheep, "what did I tell you?" "Anything is possible," admitted the wolf. and the sky was wide open. The end.
Thank you, Kimberly. Dear ones, because of the unprecedented times that we are living in and the ways our lives are touched by grief and loss in this global coronavirus pandemic, we are continuing our pandemic practice of lighting the COVID candle for any of our members who have had a loved one die during this period from COVID or another cause. If you have had a loved one die from coronavirus or another cause during this time and would like the COVID candle lit in their honor during Sunday worship, please contact one of the ministers. Today, we have several people that we are honoring. Joby Clark's uncle, David James Croft, died from a stroke on December 2nd at age 78 in Midway, Utah. Pete Larson's father, Harley E. Larson, died from COVID-19 on December 13th at age 82 in New Berlin, Wisconsin. Pete Larson's stepfather, Edward Zuzelski, died from COVID-19 on November 27th at age 91 in South Milwaukee, Wisconsin. John Stano's mother, Anna Stano, died peacefully from natural causes on December 23rd, just 2 weeks from her 95th birthday. She was surrounded by loved ones, some virtually, at Clearview Nursing Home in Juneau, Wisconsin. Terry Wiggins' stepmother, Eloise Dick Soulé, died Monday, December 28th at age 99 in Fresno, California. Today, we light our candle in honor of David James Croft, Harley E. Larson, Edward Zuzelski, Anna Stano, Eloise Dick Soulé. As we enter into a time of meditation, followed by silence, followed by singing Spirit of Life, I invite you to find a way wherever you are to ground and center yourself. Perhaps this means putting the soles of your feet on the floor. Maybe find a way to lift your spine so you can breathe deeply and let your hands come to a resting place. This meditation is by Chris Cervantes. Rest now. Rest in the peace of this moment. Be at ease. Look up at the stars and down at the grass. Imagine the stars looking back at you over years and centuries across oceans of empty space. Imagine the feel of the grass on your bare feet and feel it dry and crunchy or soft and supple. Rest now. Rest in the peace of this moment. Dream for a little while of young people and young animals, innocent in the way of the young, accepting everything in their newness. Dream for a little while of the elders and the wisdom they have to give, the voices that say to you, it is right and proper to rest now. Rest in the peace of this moment. Be still, the turning axis of the world, and let go. Let go of the long unspooling of history, of sorrow and joy and birth and death, and all the long years in between. Rest now. Rest in the peace of this moment.
Good morning. My name is Miles Schuler, and I am pleased to serve as Worship Associate today. A year ago, I worked with the City of Milwaukee on a community development program. Part of our process involved promoting the program at community meetings so people knew what the program was for and how they could apply. I wasn't too concerned about this aspect of the job. I'd just taken a speech class the year prior, so I felt confident. I knew what I needed to mention and how I should say it. The first few sessions went well. My coworker and I presented together and answered the questions from participants. At that point, I felt fine doing these events. Then there came one day when we were double booked. My coworker and I each went to the respective events alone. There was little to no reason to be nervous about it, but this was a new venue with unfamiliar people. Those things together do not bode well for my anxiety. This event was a monthly neighborhood safety meeting at a police station. I'd done one of these events before, but it was at a community organization whose staff I already knew. I was going into this event knowing no one, and I was doing it alone. I found myself sitting in the back row. An officer mentioned that she didn't know what the agenda was. There was no way for me to know beforehand when I was expected to go up. The meeting began with food and conversation, but I was too nervous to eat. I spent that time going through what I was going to say, making sure I remember everything I needed to. After what seemed like forever, it was my turn. I made the long way around the tables to the front of the room. I thanked the presenting officer, introduced the program, and my mind went blank. There was a pause a bit too long before I continued. It didn't feel like my sentences made sense, and soon we were at the question phase. Only a couple people raised their hands. The first person asked about installing a squash court, to which I replied that such a thing would be too permanent and expensive. This got confused looks, and I soon realized I left out an important chunk of the program's intent and function. The other person's hand went down, and that was it for me. I told everyone I would stay to the end in case people were interested, but I secretly hoped no one would come over. I left as soon as I could. The drive home was agony. All the thoughts I forgot while presenting came back to me. It was such a simple thing, and I had done it before. What went wrong? I should have prepared more. But what would that have looked like? Why didn't people seem interested in the program? Did I explain it well enough? Would I have gotten more interest if it went better? I had done this before. Why did I fail now? I knew I got too comfortable too fast. Why did I think I was ready when I wasn't? How was I to know I wasn't? Deep breath. I tried to remind myself these things happen, but I still wanted to avoid it in the future. So my brain went through all the scenarios again and again and again, producing nothing. I needed to get out of that headspace. I needed to prepare for the next time. I tried remembering how I had done it before, when it all went well. I put myself back in those instances, feeling the flow of my words, seeing the audience's attentive eyes, gaining that sense of accomplishment. The scene changed to a library community room, my next venue. I imagined doing my presentation there. That got me past the negative thoughts. A few days later, I had my next solo event. I felt ready early in the day, but pulling up to the library, I became nervous. The what-ifs started coming, but I was ready for them. They were replaced with maybes. Maybe participants will be inspired. Maybe someone will tell their friends and neighbors about the program. Maybe we'll have a great project come out of this. I parked my car in the lot, grabbed my supplies, and headed towards the door. A renewed sense of confidence came over me, saying, "Hey, you know what you're talking about. You have done this before."
Thank you, Teresa. That was lovely. Well, I have always had short legs. So various activities in public school phy ed would give me pause. The long jump in track and field was one of these. I watched my fellow classmates with long legs take their running jump, competing with each other for the farthest mark. It was way beyond me. Then one day, I noticed it looked like they were flying as they took their running jump. I decided I could fly too. I knew I could not compete with my classmates, but I could compete with myself. I decided to imagine myself flying when I took that running jump and see if it made a difference in my mark. It did. Imagining something that might lead to a better outcome resulted in my personal best in the long jump. I was surprised. My classmates were surprised. My phy ed teacher was surprised. They asked, "How did you do that?" I replied, "Oh, I just imagined myself flying." Athletes often use the technique of visualization as part of their training. Imagining yourself making the perfect landing, throwing the longest pass, hitting the home run helps it happen. It is not sufficient. It's not the only thing that athletes need to do. But imagining is necessary to help them let go of past mistakes and increase the possibility of a better outcome in the future. Poet Lucille Clifton wrote, "I am running into a new year, and the old years blow back like a wind that I catch in my hair, like strong fingers, like all my old promises, and it will be hard to let go of what I said to myself about myself when I was 16 and 26 and 36, even 36, but I am running into a new year, and I beg what I love and I leave to forgive me." We have turned a corner, friends. We said goodbye to the year 2020, and we are now living in the year 2021. Hmm. What will we do with the new year? What will it take to imagine a better future? We are running into a new year, and all the old years blow back like a wind that we catch in our hair, like strong fingers, like all our old promises. And it will be hard to let go of what we said to ourselves about ourselves when we were 16 and 26 and 36 and 46 and 56, even 56. But we are running into a new year, and we beg what we love and we leave to forgive us. There is so much we were not able to accomplish last year, so much we could not completely mitigate, so much pain and suffering, loss and grief, so much hardship and death. Then the calendar turned its leaf, and we are presented with a new year, as artificial as that marker may seem. What will we do with the new year? What can we imagine that will help bring a better outcome in 2021? And what does it take for us to even be able and willing to imagine? I don't know about you, But I am just beginning to allow myself to imagine life beyond COVID-19. I don't want to get my hopes up too far. I don't want to get my heart set on anything. It's a survival strategy, but one that will only take me so far. Winter is a teacher of vulnerability, Dr. Robin Wall Kimmerer, the plant ecologist, said. Plants have several survival strategies like going underground or packing all they need to live into small buds or seeds. But animals are especially exposed. If we die, we die. We don't have buds and seeds, she said. There are beautiful metaphorical parallels. What can go on if we do die? Stories and memory and spirit can go on. The most important thing is to hold that tiny spark of life that is our work, to hold on to life. So when spring comes back, there can be growth. If you fail at that, spring doesn't matter, she said. If you, like me, are hesitant to imagine much about life after COVID, it might be because we were so disoriented by the last year. Where are we even starting from with our imagination? People continue to die from COVID on a massive level. I don't have to quote the statistics to drive this point home. Because of the pandemic, we are more aware of death than usual, and thus reminded of our own mortality constantly. How does this affect us and our imagination? In a BBC Future article called Why Contemplating Death Changes How You Think, Jonathan Jong wrote in 2016, social psychologists have, for almost 30 years now, examined the social and psychological effects of being confronted with our own mortality. In well over 200 experiments, individuals have been instructed to imagine themselves dying. In the first study of this kind, judges who were confronted with their mortality beforehand set a much higher bail than those who were not. Besides making us more punitive, thinking about death also increases our nationalistic bias and makes us more prejudiced against other racial, religious, and age groups. These dozens of studies show that being reminded of death strengthens our ties to the groups we belong to the detriment of those who are different from us. They also found reminders of death affect our political and religious beliefs in interesting ways. They polarize us. Political liberals become more liberal, while conservatives become more conservative. Similarly, religious people tend to assert their beliefs more fervently, while non-religious people disavow more. Why? Because reminders of death compel us to seek immortality. Many religions offer literal immortality, but secular affiliations, such as our nation states and ethnic groups, can provide symbolic immortality. These groups and their traditions are a part of who we are, and they outlive us. Researchers have also found that reminders of death increase our desire for fame and for children, both of which are commonly associated with symbolic immortality. We want to be immortalized through our work and our DNA. Like I said, this article was published in 2016, yet it explains so much of what happened in society in 2020. A recent article in The Guardian asks, has a year of living with COVID rewired our brains? It explores the psychological impact of living through a pandemic on the individual level. Aoife O'Donovan, an associate professor of psychiatry at the Weill Institute for Neurosciences in California, who specializes in trauma, said, "We are dealing with so many layers of uncertainty. Truly, horrible things have happened, and they will happen to others. And we don't know when, or to whom, or how. And it is really demanding cognitively and physiologically." The impact is experienced throughout the body, she says, because when people perceive a threat, abstract or actual, they activate a biological stress response. Cortisol mobilizes glucose, the immune system is triggered, increasing levels of inflammation. This affects the function of the brain, making people more sensitive to threats and less sensitive to rewards. The more systemic inflammation people have, because their biological response to stressors is activated, the more sensitive they will be to perceived social threats. O'Donovan did not say this, but I'm going to hazard a guess that if we are more sensitive to threats and less sensitive to rewards, then our imaginations might be more likely to imagine worst case scenarios and less likely to imagine a better future. And yet a better future is what we all need. So how will we get to a better future? We are fooling ourselves if we think we can take a running jump from January 2021 right across to the post-pandemic future. We're going to have to get there day by day. I recently read a December 29th article in The Atlantic Online called "Where Year 2 of the Pandemic Will Take Us." Hearing it named, we are in year 2 of the pandemic, caused a light bulb to turn on in my mind. It helped me recognize again that we are in it for the long haul. The article said the pandemic will end not with a declaration, but with a long, protracted exhalation. Even if everything goes according to plan, which is a significant if, the horrors of 2020 will leave lasting legacies. A pummeled healthcare system will be reeling, short-staffed, and facing new surges of people with long-haul COVID symptoms or mental health problems. Social gaps that were widened will be further torn apart. Grief will turn into trauma, and a nation that has begun to return to normal will have to decide whether to remember that normal led to this. Michael Osterholm, an epidemiologist at the University of Minnesota, said, "We're trying to get through this with a vaccine without truly exploring our soul." Friends, I don't want to take away any sense of excitement and hope about the vaccines, but I am struck by Osterholm's statement The vaccines are huge, but they are not the only thing that will get us to a better future. Exploring our soul may be the place where we find the seed of imagining what we want our lives to be individually and collectively, as a people, as a nation, as a world, post-pandemic. Our Minister of Religious Education, Reverend Kimberly, wrote in her January newsletter column, "The practice of imagination or visualization increases our ability to retain neuroplasticity in our minds, the ability to imagine, the power to form mental images that are not present. Shifting how reality is experienced is a way we enrich, expand, and find meaning in our lives. The imagination is the seed of possibility." In our Religious Education Families Together session today at 11:15 a.m., families will find that seed of imagination together by telling stories about the past year. Because understanding the past helps us imagine the future. And it begins with people telling the real story of their lives. Why would we want to listen to people tell the story of their life over the past year, especially that year 2020? Because it keeps us from getting compassion fatigue. The Dear Pandemic women scientists posted on their Facebook page recently, as the tragedy of the COVID-19 pandemic grows, it becomes harder for us to process such tremendous losses. Something called compassion fatigue may be contributing to this. Research tells us that we tend to feel more empathy and compassion for individuals in danger or in need. But as more people are affected, we often see a reduction in that empathy. We can become desensitized to the bad news when it comes in day after day, leaving us awash in statistics instead of touched by individual stories. I think Reverend Kimberly is on to something with her family storytelling session. When we imagine ourselves in other people's stories through the power of listening with compassion, we put the seed of possibility into each other's hands. So let's listen to each other's stories as we begin the new year together. Let's start there. Let's listen to the real life experiences of people most affected by the pandemic. Healthcare workers, tell us your story. Parents, tell us your story. Teachers, tell us your story. Students, tell us your story. Delivery drivers, tell us your story. Grocery store workers, tell us your story. Cleaning service workers, tell us your story. Small business owners, tell us your story. Childcare workers, tell us your story. Therapists and social workers, tell us your story. Caregivers, tell us your story. And when you tell us your story, Tell us also what you need. So what you need now will help us build the future that we all need. You know where to find me. I want to listen. I want to hear your stories. If we hear people's stories and what they actually need, our imaginations and our empathy will be activated and give us the courage. Give us the courage to take that running jump into the future. May it be so.
In that great getting up morning, fare thee well, fare thee well. In that great getting up morning, fare thee well, fare thee well. In that great getting up morning, fare thee well, fare thee well. In that great getting up morning, fare thee well, fare thee well. When you hear that thunder rolling, fare thee well, fare thee well. When you see that lightning crashing, fare thee well, fare thee well. In that great getting up morning, fare thee well, fare thee well. In that great getting up morning, fare thee well, fare thee well. There's a better day a-coming, fare thee well, fare thee well. There's a world of peace and justice, fare thee well, fare thee well. In that great getting up morning, fare thee well, fare thee well. In that great getting up morning, fare thee well, fare thee well. In that great getting up morning, fare thee well, fare thee well. In that great getting up morning, fare thee well, fare thee well. In that great getting up morning, fare thee well, getting up morning, that great getting up morning, fare thee well, fare thee well. In that great getting up morning, fare thee well, getting up morning, that great getting up morning, fare thee well, fare thee well. In that great get up, get up, get up, 'cause it's a morning, that great get up morning, fare thee well, fare thee well. In that great get up, get up, 'cause it's a morning, that great get up morning, fare thee well, fare thee well. In that great get up morning, fare thee well, get up, 'cause it's a morning, that great get up morning, fare thee well, fare thee well. In that great get up morning, fare thee well, get up, 'cause it's a morning, that great get up morning, fare thee well, fare thee well. In that great get up morning, rise up, stand morning, fare thee well. In that great get up morning, rise up, stand morning, fare thee well. In that great get up morning, fare thee well, fare thee well. In that great get up morning, fare thee well, fare thee well. In that great get up morning, fare thee well, fare thee well. In that great get up morning, fare thee well, fare thee well. In that great get up morning, fare thee well, fare thee well. In that great get up morning, fare thee well, fare thee well.
Thank you, Leah. It brings hope and joy into my body. Thank you so much. And thank you all so much for your generosity. Pledges are the core of our church's spiritual practice of generosity. And we're also grateful for additional gifts to support our ministry, and thank the folks out there who are appreciating this online ministry and supporting it by texting 73256 with the message "Give to UU $, or giving on our website. Your gifts help us to continue to provide this ministry. We also share the plate with an organization each month. Peace Action Wisconsin is our January Share the Plate recipient. Peace Action Wisconsin is a peace and justice organization which works to abolish the threats of war and nuclear weapons. They are committed to nonviolence as a way of life for a world where human needs are met and the environment is preserved. You can go to their website and give with the note, Share the Plate from FUSM. You can see all these options on your screen now, and they will live on in the YouTube comments of this video after worship is over. Thank you so much for giving right now or when you come back later. Your support keeps us and our community partners going. Thank you. These closing words are an excerpt by Teresa I. Soto from Finding Our Dreams. The antidote for doubt is dreaming. The dreams that seem impossible, listen, that's their nature. If they had already happened, then they would be realities. Be brave enough to name your dream. Nurture it. And allow the rhythm of your breath to bring your dreams to life. May it be so.
We are going, heaven knows where we are going. We know within, and we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. Whoa, yeah, yeah. 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 Whoa, yeah, yeah.